Assalamu alaikum, and a very warm welcome to Visionary Pulse with me, your host Farzana Mayet, a segment that focuses on chatting to game changers and change makers. And tonight is certainly no different, where we chat to one such game changer and change maker. We say a very good evening to Dr. Kylie Steyn, who is a medical doctor in the pediatric emergency department at one of the largest hospital complexes in the Southern Hemisphere. And as part of the senior clinical team, she contributes to the training and the mentorship of medical students from the University of Witwatersrand, shaping the next generation of clinicians through both bedside, teaching, and academic guidance. Her clinical background spans several years in adult and pediatric emergency medicine, supported by formal training in clinical research of good clinical practice certification. This combination of acute care and research forms the foundation of her evidence-driven approach to medicine. Beyond her work in the hospital, Dr. Steyn is deeply invested in women's and children's health, with particular interest in the intersection between physical exercise, mental resilience, and daily sustainable wellness practices. She has completed several, Ironman races and now competes in CrossFit as well. A very good evening and a warm welcome, Dr. Steyn, to Visionary Pulse. It's an honor and a privilege to have you on my show. So let's start from the top. Wow. Working in one of the largest pediatric emergency departments in the Southern Hemisphere, what key lessons has this high-pressure environment taught you about both medicine and humanity?
Well, I can definitely say that being in such a huge hospital gives you such an expanse of patients and personalities and different types of people that you get exposed to. And it's deeply human before it is clinical. And it's so beautiful to see the walks of life that people come from. And I can tell you stories and stories about people who will take a bicycle with their family to drive to the hospital in an emergency to get there. There are patients who will come at 3 a.m. just because they didn't feel something was right with their child. Then you'll have patients who will literally spend their very last cent on a taxi fare to get there. And it's just so beautiful how there's just a connection with people, and that you will never, in my opinion, be able to replace a clinician with AI, because that human interaction, that knowing, that clinical responsibility that you get from another person, it's just, you can't replace it with a machine. And I'm so grateful to be able to be part of the clinician family, and that we can diagnose, that we can learn from other people. And I mean, almost every day I learn from someone something new. If it's not a colleague, it's a patient. It's someone who humbles me. It's someone that teaches me something about life. So
and I love that spark in your eye, because obviously, you know, you're getting to interact with different people on a daily basis. But Kylie, how is it that, you know, like you said, there's people that come with their last taxi fare in the middle of the night, they're coming on a bicycle. I mean, that really humbles you, right? To think that we find so much to complain about, but here is people, they've got it much more worse. And here they're trying to do the best for themselves.
Yes. No, definitely. And not only, I've worked in private medicine as well, where I've worked as a GP, and there are rich persons that are sitting in front of you. And I can be honest, everyone has their own mental instabilities. You'll have people who will have absolutely nothing and are still finding all the joy in their children. And then you'll have someone with all the riches, but still has so many financial responsibilities that they're as depressed as someone who without any money at all. So it's really a beautiful thing to see that you can influence people, and it's a huge responsibility for a doctor.
I was just going to say, and you are then making all the difference now.
Yes, and that's why the patient interaction and how you do it with kindness, with responsibility, and knowing that in the back of your mind that whatever you say, in a way, can and will be held against you, but not against you, but it can be
detrimental to that person's psyche, so
it
to
can
speak,
be.
right?
It will hold a lot of value, what you're saying, because people really do know that doctors work hard to get where they are. And so they think that all of this expansive knowledge, all of this background studying will bring them to a place of good advice.
And what you're saying now, they take it as gospel truth, that this is what my clinician is advising, this is what my clinician has diagnosed, and this is it. I'm going to go by what they're saying. And sometimes it may not go the way they expect. And now how does that make you feel? I've got to ask, because I mean, from a perspective now looking into your world.
We all know that we've had to deal with bad news before.
Yes.
Maybe you've had to break something to your daughter. Maybe you've had to break news to a friend. But breaking bad news and sharing emotional connections with someone who's coming to a place of casualty, like where I work, it's always the highest emotional part, because you're bringing in this emergency. You're ready for the doctor to help you.
Right.
And you're coming with this expectation. Maybe there's a bit more stability when it comes to the ward, because you might have a working diagnosis, you might have something. But when you come to casualty, you have a blank page. You have I have this emergency, please will you help me? Is it an emergency? Because often with kids we don't know, right?
We don't know, right? And every small thing is
And
for a parent an emergency.
Yes,
Ask me, I
yes.
know. I was one of those parents.
But honestly, the way I deal with it, I've cried multiple times.
Right.
And obviously you can't cry in front of the patient always. Maybe sometimes someone does, you can feel that there's a space of, okay, maybe it's appropriate for me to actually cry with this mom. Maybe it's appropriate for me to hold her hand and pray with her. Maybe it's okay for me to share love in a different way with this patient. But honestly, I've cried in this week about patients. So it does also affect you. And
I was
that's
just
why.
going to say, Kylie, how do you switch off then? You know, leaving
Yes.
the hospital and then going home to your happy family, but you've just broken sad news to mums and
Yeah,
parents. And
yeah.
how do you differentiate? How do you now switch off? I wouldn't think that that's quite easy to do.
Oh, definitely not. And that's obviously where we also need to put our vulnerability.
Right.
That we need to be vulnerable not only in front of our spouse, possibly with telling them our feelings. And that's why it helps to be married to a doctor and understands my clinical background and what we've all been through. He's also worked in emergencies before. And also bouncing off things with colleagues. How do you deal with this? I have a colleague who works with suspected child abuse and neglect every day.
Oh.
I have a colleague that works in palliative care. And both of them, I ask them, how do you deal with this? How do you go home with this? And honestly, it's about a support group. It's about asking for help when you need it, and not just storing everything inside, because like a ticking time bomb, there will be a time when it will probably explode and come out. And
not in the
that's
best of ways, right?
that's not what you want. So taking out those subtle stresses at the right timing is very vital. And if professional help is needed, that is definitely something we should all consider. If we need a psychologist, if we need to ask someone about mental methods, because medication can always put a plaster over something, but does it really fix the core problem?
The foundation is not fixed.
That's why we need cognitive-based therapy to encourage the thought process rewiring, like a telephone wire that is going to a central area of where the electricity comes from. If those wires are twisted and messed up and too knotted, we need sometimes to rewire and restructure our thought patterns so that they don't always go to the mess, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so as part of the senior clinical team, Kylie, how do you approach mentoring medical students, and what core principles do you hope they carry into their careers?
It's a very good question. I do love teaching students, and the students that have gone through the pediatrics ward, I try and make every patient mean something to them. What can I teach them with this patient?
Yes.
And I've always loved the quote, or my husband says this a lot actually, that if someone is to be a good doctor, what is the difference between a good doctor and a bad doctor? And this is what I try to tell the students as well, is that if someone has a great effort in their work ethic, that is where you will have a great doctor. Because you can be the most knowledgeable, you can be the most skilled, but you feel maybe you're lazy. Then laziness will not make you a great doctor. But a great doctor is someone who's willing to put all their effort
that extra mile.
all their effort in for that patient. That patient is the most important patient right now, and to work hard and be willing to learn. If you're not teachable, you will probably never improve to your maximum capability. And that's why I tell the students is, if you're not lazy, you're not going to be a bad doctor. don't worry. You just work
Don't
hard.
be afraid of the hard work, right?
Be willing to put on your running shoes. Don't wear heels like me today. I can work nowhere fast in these.
Right.
But wear your sneakers and be ready to walk that extra blood gas and to do that, because a hard-working doctor is one that I will respect.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you more. Kylie, you know, we are at the end of the year, and a lot of kids are going to be looking forward to, now, what are they going to be doing in their careers, what career to take, what direction to take, and many who are going to go into pediatrics, I would think, and for me, as a patient, as a mom, you know, empathy plays a huge role in the doctor that I would want to now entrust the care of my child in. What would you say is the most defining factor, you know, for anyone who is considering going into medicine, dealing with kids, dealing with pediatrics like yourself? What would you say is the most defining factor? Because, like, I've met doctors, and this is, you know, in no way any negativity spilled onto any doctors, but you meet different characteristics of different
Yes,
doctors
no,
who
definitely.
deal with an anxious mom like myself in a different manner. And then you get someone like you, who I've heard now is like all empathy. All the time you worried more about your patients than getting the job done, than, you know, sending the patient home.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
would you
yeah.
say is the most defining thing for the benefit of our viewers out there?
Well, definitely I would say that with my clinical decision making, I would never do something to a patient, especially a child, if I wouldn't do that to my own child. And it's actually changed my clinical management on a specific child 2 weeks ago, where I
Really?
was going to say, am I going to let this child go without this treatment, or am I going to let them go with this treatment? And I said to myself, if this was my daughter in front of me,
What would you do?
what would I do? And I would have given her the treatment. And that changed my management completely. And the same with, I mean, maybe you're starting off as a new doctor now, you're a student doctor, and now you're like, am I going to do this? Am I not going to do this? The question is, if it was your auntie, if it was your mother,
would you do?
if it was your sister, would you do it? And if the answer is yes, then you should do it for that patient, not just because they're from a different walk of life, or because maybe this is the rich person in front of you. You know, if you wouldn't do it for your own family member, then don't do it, or do it for
So
the
don't
patient.
differentiate, I would think.
Definitely.
That is absolutely amazing. Okay, so how has your dual experience in adult and pediatrics emergency medicine shaped your perspective on acute care and patient needs?
So definitely I have 2 points that I have learned from. And that is that in emergency medicine, you're never born an emergency medicine doctor.
Exactly.
You have to grow into learning how to work in high pressure environments. It never comes naturally. So it's something that you have to either do breathing exercises, which I absolutely love, because they definitely, if you do a breathing exercise, possibly a double inhale with a slow exhale, you can
just gonna ask
actually
you.
calm down your heart rate. You can slow down your heart rate, and it's so effective that you're actually able to be completely calm afterwards.
Can you
So-
just do it one more time for the
Sure,
benefit of
sure.
our viewers?
No problem. So it's a deep inhale, and then when you think your lungs are full, you go again. And then, so the benefit is, as long as your exhale is longer than your inhale, then that slows down your heart rate. It's got a lot of physiological meaning to it, but
It
in,
does
in
help.
short, that's what helps.
Okay,
To
wow.
slow down your heart rate. Yes, so knowing how to deal with an emergency situation, there was a general practitioner when I worked in Nelspruit. He said, never run to an emergency. I'll tell you, it's probably better to sometimes run to certain emergencies, but he said, never run to an emergency, because then you get there flustered and you don't know how to think. So the principle is,
You've got to be calm.
approach an emergency in calmness, and always have a stepwise approach. And that's why we always, when they teach you in pediatric advanced life support, or in basic life support, or in ACLS, all those types of things, they always tell you A, B, C, D. Or in ACLS, it would be CAB, so cardiac, and then airway, and then breathing. But with children, it's usually A, B, C, so airway, breathing, and circulation. And when you approach this patient, you already have a framework. Now you know where to start. Instead of going there and you're like, oh, wait, what's going on? What's going on?
Exactly. So you're more anxious than the patient itself or the family.
Yes. And you
Okay.
asked about what I've learned from working with peds and with working with adults,
Adults.
is that you're never only treating one patient. You're treating a family.
I love that.
You're treating the child in front of you. You're treating the mom to advise her on how to change this next time, on how to pick up signs better. And you're also treating, in an adult situation, you're treating the patient, but there's the goko outside, there is the auntie, and they're busy messaging the uncle as well, and they're trying to ask questions on the sideline. So we always have to be clinically, or not only clinically, but emotionally connected to your patient to know when is it time for a counseling session for the family. When is it time to sit down an extra 10 minutes with this mom because she really doesn't understand the concept of why her breast milk is not coming in, for example. And that's why it's important to be so connected to your patients and ask them how they feel, because then you actually know where they are in their walk of life, how they're doing.
Wow. That is absolutely amazing, and I love that. And I love that our viewers then can say that, look, this is a difference between a healthcare professional that's working with kids and adults. But obviously, like I've said, the main premise of this is obviously empathy, to know when to say certain things, to know how to deal with certain things. And you've given a very good tip. Don't ever run or rush into an emergency situation. So, Kylie, in what way has your training in clinical research and good clinical practice influence your approach to evidence-based decision-making in the emergency department?
Well, doing research, I've learned that not all research is equal. There are different phases of research. You get, your animal studies, then you go on to first level human studies, and then you work your way up to your studies that are just being on the market. So then they're actually just testing for a very broad side effect profile.
Okay.
So with all those different steps and phases of research, you realize, oh, okay, if I read phase 1, then it's probably not such a deep research, it's not such a strong research for this very one. And that was what the trouble was in COVID, is that a lot of people were sharing a lot of rumors and things over social media.
Any WhatsApp we got, we forwarded.
Yes. And I think in a way that a lot of the doctors, the trust towards doctors actually faltered, which was very sad for us as the doctors, because here we are with all of this love for our patients, and then we have patients telling us, no, they want this, or no, they want this, And that's what also made me so passionate about research, is that where's your evidence? Show me the evidence, and I'll change my management for sure. I need evidence, and I want to know that it's a good study. The bigger your study population, the better the study.
Okay.
So obviously, because then you've got more people to have tested. And then you have more side effects and more things that you can add to that little white paper that always comes in your pill box.
Right.
So it's always important to know where your evidence comes from. And that's also what I love to base in a very academic environment where I work, is that I'm part of an academic hospital where you can teach and you can say, hey, listen, I read this amazing study,
right.
And I can share the study with my husband, and he shares studies that he's read with me. And then we just build on each other's research, which is really amazing.
That is awesome. Okay, so how do you translate and discipline of sport into practical everyday health protocols for the women and mothers who follow your work?
So sport has always been an example for me in life.
From the onset?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I've always loved sport. I used to play hockey as a high school person, and then moved on to doing just running in varsity while I was trying to study, because then you can only fit in exercise from your door until your door, Right. You can only fit in so much. But and then I moved on to triathlon, and then I've also started doing CrossFit now, which I absolutely love.
Let's
the weightlifting.
Let's talk about the Ironman, because you're deviating from that. I know you don't like to celebrate your success, but the Ironman, tell me that journey. How was it?
I've done 70.3s, so not the complete full one, but I've done 70.3s, and I've learned to realize that talent can open the door to success in sport, but discipline definitely keeps it open.
Yeah.
And if you don't continue with a method in sport and being healthy in endurance sport or in any type of sport, you won't really be able to be successful. And I really enjoyed my experience in the sporting element with Ironman specifically, because you'd stand on the start line and you'd look over at the sea and you'd realize, oh my goodness, the sea just changed like this. And then you can feel the wind that's just coming from nowhere. And you realize, wow, I could be blown over on the bike. And then once you finish your bike, you realize, okay, wow, the sun is beating down on me. How am I going to have energy to finish? So It's like life. Life can throw anything at you
So
at
you're
any
constantly
time.
testing your resilience, right?
Yes,
Like
definitely.
you said, it's life.
Yes, and it's only the tough situations that really cause us to have deep-seated resilience. It's not the
Absolutely.
easy
I
times in
couldn't
our
agree with
lives.
you more.
It's not the easy times in our lives. Yeah.
So when you train for this, how tedious is it? How difficult is it? Because like from the start, I would think that it's the diet, it's the whole routine in the home that changes.
No, definitely. I could definitely talk a while on my routine. You actually start your discipline the night before, and not only the day of. So when we do plan, then that's the most important thing. Is if you don't plan for a race, you will not complete it. If you don't pack your fluids, if you don't pack your little gels, you won't be able to complete it. So such is life. If you aren't able to prepare the night before for something you're going to do the next day, for example, for me, it's packing my kids' lunches, it's packing my husband's lunch, it's packing my own lunch, making sure that I have a wholesome meal ready for me the next day so that I don't ring up Mr. D and get McDonald's, you know. So if I don't prepare, I won't be able to be
And
successful
that
the
makes
next
you
day.
more flustered, don't you think? Because the next day
Yes.
you're already approaching the day
Yes.
with a rushed state, with an unorganized state.
Definitely.
So the whole day is rushed and
Definitely.
filled with a lot of anxiety.
Yes, and you most likely won't get to work on time, which my German colleague will tell me very much about.
Wow. So Kylie, you are deeply passionate about women's and children's health.
Yes.
But what gaps do you believe still exist in this field? And what do you think we can do to change this?
That's a very good question. I definitely think that when it comes to women and children's health, there's not enough exposure to the research. And that's where my passion lies, is that I actually want to tell people more about the things that I've learned about and how I can expose that. And that's why social media is such a beautiful platform, because anyone with a screen can have access to it.
Exactly.
And that we can learn from each other. And a community is where you will find help. Joy shared is joy doubled.
But Kylie, most of the time, and I think you will agree with me on that, a lot of people don't like sharing. But
Yes.
don't you think by sharing, it's spreading the knowledge more vastly,
Yes.
and communication is key?
Yes, definitely. And that I share what has worked in my life. I mean, it might not necessarily be
Work
the
for the
recipe
next
for
person, yes.
everyone, but we can always correct things at a micro level, and you can eventually feel like you're in a successful rut.
Absolutely. So, Kylie, you juggle a demanding medical career, motherhood, and a marriage to another medical doctor. What strategies help you maintain balance, mental clarity, and emotional well being? Because you wear many hats, right?
Definitely knowing when to ask for help. And like I've said previously, is if you need professional help, it's definitely something that we should all consider. I've gone through a stage where I definitely needed a psychologist.
Okay.
And praise the Lord, right now I'm not on any psychological treatment at all. My sport definitely helps me clear my mind, because there is a stage of when you are exercising that all you can think about is breathing right now. And in that space, you're actually resting your mind, which I'm very grateful for. And that's besides the fact that once you finish exercising, your muscles themselves actually release myokines, which
Okay.
increase your ability to think positive thoughts. And there's a whole science behind it, these myokines, that they're actually saying that maybe muscles are an endocrine organ, which is quite interesting to
Wow.
think about. Like we also spoke about at the Women Wellness Talk, the endocrinologist was talking about fat being an endocrine
Yes.
organ. So likewise, muscle, the opposite. We want to build more muscle and lose more fat, and then having more endocrine organs that release good myokines. That's the way forward, and that's why my strategy is exercise is medicine, prevention is cure.
Absolutely well said. But Kylie, before you leave us, when do you know that, you mentioned that you've seen a psychologist. When do you know, just for the benefit of our viewers, many may be struggling silently, afraid to ask for help, and there's the stigma attached that, if you are struggling mentally, there's various stigmas that is attached. Various communities believe things differently. But when do you know it's now time that I need help? I'm almost reaching breaking point. When would you advise our viewers that, listen, don't leave it till too late?
I would say too late is probably when you become dysfunctional. So
Okay.
when you're unable to get yourself out of bed anymore, when you're unable to cook or make dishes, or do the dishes or cook
So
for
daily
your family,
menial task becomes like taxing on you.
becomes very taxing.
Okay.
So when your activities of daily living, they are not functional anymore. So that would be a little bit too late. Before that would be, wow, my mood is depressive. I don't feel hope in the future anymore. Wow, I don't feel happy. I don't feel like there is, I mean, suicidal thoughts are probably a little bit too far along the line as well. But definitely dysfunctional if you're starting to slip up on too many aspects of your life. And
That's when you know.
That's when you know. Rather get help sooner than later.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow, Kylie, this has been such an inspirational evening. So please tell me, before you leave us, what is one motivational quote that you ascribe to?
Well, Nelson Mandela said that courage is not actually the absence of fear, but the triumph over it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for joining me on Visionary Pulse. It has been a privilege to have you today.
Thank you so much, Farzana.
So that brings us to the end of another wonderful segment of Visionary Pulse. Join me, Farzana Mayet, next week as I chat to another game changer and change maker. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.